Hey, what's up, everybody? Tim Albrecht here, and welcome to this week's episode of the Ask a YFP CFP segment of the Your Financial Pharmacist podcast, where we feature questions from you, the YFP community, to be answered by one of YFP Planning's fee-only certified financial planners. Before we jump into today's question, I want to give a shout out to YFP Planning's incredible financial planning team that makes this segment possible. YFP Planning offers fee-only comprehensive financial planning services that are customized to the pharmacy professional. So whether you want to optimize your investing plan, pay off student loans, or simply build a solid financial plan, YFP Planning will help get your income working for you rather than the other way around. You can learn more by visiting yfpplanning.com. Again, that's yfpplanning.com. One last thing, please note that this podcast is intended for educational purposes and should not be considered financial or investment advice, as we do not know the variables to one's personal situation when answering a question. Okay, this week's question comes from a member of the YFP Facebook group, and the question is looking for advice on changing from a 401k to a 403b. Recently got out of a community pharmacy position, now with a nonprofit hospital, so the retirement plan is a 403b. with T. Rowe Price. Currently have a 401k with Fidelity. Is there a benefit to rolling over to the 403b versus rolling over to an IRA through Vanguard or through something similar? I'm thinking I need to sit down with someone, but was hoping for some help with what questions I should ask and how to make the best decision. Any help would be appreciated. Tim Baker, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so this is a great question, and a lot of the times when we work with clients at YFP Planning, it's there's typically a collection of these old 401ks, 403bs from previous employers, and I think it's really important to wrap your arms around these and really understand where the investments are, who's the custodian, what are the fees, what is it actually invested in, to really maximize your ability to build wealth. One of the biggest assets on your balance sheet outside of your house really is going to be your 401k, et cetera. So just to back up with this question, there's really four main options, Tim, that you can do when leaving a previous employer for a new employer with regard to an old 401k or a 403b. So the one thing that you could do, which is typically ill-advised, is to cash it out. So you would say, I have $25,000 in this account, I'm going to cash it out and spend money on whatever today. And that's typically going to lead to a lot of taxes, the 10% penalty. You typically do not want to do that. The second thing that you could do is you could actually just leave it where it's at. So you could leave it at, the custodian that you were with your previous employer. Sometimes people don't like to do that just because of maybe some emotions with the previous employer or where it's actually at, the custodian. I think a big reason would be to move it is just because of the fees. Typically 401ks and 403bs have fees that are typically not transparent to you. And sometimes they can be more so with an inactive participant or, a person that has left the company. So not necessarily always the best thing to leave it. Sometimes that is the case, but not always. The third option, Tim, would be to transfer it to your current employer. So you could, in this case, that you could transfer it to the Fidelity 401k and basically just keep it all as one account. And again, sometimes that's a good move based on fees and investment availability and things like that. Sometimes not. The fourth and final option, Tim, is to roll it over into an IRA. Now, I've said this time and time again. More often than not, if you're talking to a financial advisor, we skip option 1, we skip option 2, and we skip option 3, and we go right to option 4. And the reason for that is because that's typically a function of how an advisor gets paid. They can charge you fees and commissions off of that money, that you roll over to an IRA for them to manage for you. Although the advice might be tainted, it typically can be good advice nonetheless. And the reason I believe that is that typically in the IRA world, in most cases, the fees are minimal. You have much more flexibility with regards to investment options and things like that. So that is definitely something that when we work with clients, we assess all four of those options and we try to find where the client is going to have the most benefit or what's in the best interest of the client. So sometimes people just do this, I don't want to say willy-nilly, but they're like, I just have this new account, let me just move that. And that could be a mistake because the new 401k or 403b could be somewhat terrible.
Yep.
And then sometimes it's like, if you rolled over to an IRA, you just don't know what you're doing, or the advisor that you're working with, which we see this a lot, you're just paying more in fees and commissions and things like that. So it is something that I would definitely, again, take a close look at, potentially ask a professional about where, and I would say a fee only financial planner that has your best interest in mind, not theirs, to really, get a good direction on what you should do with these monies as you're kind of making this transition.
Yeah, and Tim, I suspect that this is, as you mentioned, something that you see often with clients of YFP planning. I've had a conversation with 2 or 3 folks in the last week that this was one of, many things that they were considering and working through at the financial plan. And I think, changing jobs, life gets busy. It's one of those things. It's just that step to make a change, right? And to move things and wanting to make sure you've got good advice. And so I think this is a really good opportunity to engage with a planner, again, not just for this, but among other parts of the financial plan. As we've said before, not all retirement plans, 401k, 403bs, are created equal in terms of both options and fees. And we talked on episode 208 about why minimizing fees on your investments is so important, and gave some really powerful examples of how significant those fees could be. So options and fees and navigating through that. And I think working with someone that can help coach you through that as well, and see with how that investing fits in with the rest of the financial plan. So folks that are ready to work with or consider working with one of our certified financial planners at YFP Planning, you can head on over to yfpplanning.com and schedule a free discovery call to see if those services are a good fit for you. Thanks again for listening to this week's episode of the Ask a YFP CFP segment of the Your Financial Pharmacist podcast. If we feature your question on the show, we'll send you a super comfy YFP t-shirt. You can submit your question by sending an email to info@yourfinancialpharmacist.com, or you can record your question by visiting yourfinancialpharmacist.com/ask YFP. Also, if you don't feel comfortable sharing your name on the episode, you can send or record your question anonymously. Have a great rest of your week.